Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa. Welcome to this video. Welcome to my channel. It's not something I normally say because I think it sounds a little bit rote, but this is a little bit of a different video. This is just chatty and we should start with that. This is going to be a little bit more casual, a little bit less editing, a little more long form talking. And so I would suggest maybe you put this on in the background while you do something else, multitask. This video is not going to require your full attention, but it's just sort of the style that works for me today, so we'll try it, I guess. I am sorry for the very plain background. I have a bed to assemble, but I don't have a drill. So that is a project that I'm working on and that you might see in an upcoming vlog if we can successfully problem solve, and then I can start, hanging stuff on the walls once I know what the bed height looks like and things like that. So hopefully we'll have a less sterile background for some future content. I'm also working with some waning light, so I'm sorry if this begins to look really artificial in the lighting, but that's not very important. What I wanted to talk about today is I recently, was gone from YouTube for a little while, and so during that time I obviously read some books, so I thought I could update you on that. But also the primary reason that I was gone was because I was working on a master's degree in literature, and that got a bit overwhelming, and so I was mostly working on that. So we could just do sort of like a casual update for things along those lines. So for starters, I might talk more about my master's program in another video in the future, but I don't have that planned for a while. So just as a little bit of an update for those of you that have been here for a while and have been, I guess, good faithful viewers that have been invested in my content and my life for a little bit. I did do a master's program. I actually did it at an Irish university called Mary Immaculate College. I did this because I knew that if I ever did a post grad, like a graduate level program, I wanted to go to a European university, but then the pandemic meant that I couldn't actually go over there. It worked out for the best though, because of the distance, I was able to stay home and both save and earn more money than if I were to go abroad. And also because of it having to transition online, I got resident tuition rates. So all in all, the amount of expense for getting a master's degree was very amazing. A very, very good deal for me, at least from an American perspective. And I've been to Ireland. I love Ireland, and I would love to be able to go over there and meet my advisor and some of the friends and students that I studied with and got to know. That would be really fun to do again when travel is a little bit more reasonable. For my dissertation, I did do my dissertation on Hank Green's novels, An Absolutely Remarkable Thing and A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor, which I have mentioned this before. And given how much research I did, I absolutely should make a very in-depth review of these two books, which I still haven't, because I wrote 70 pages on them. So that feels like I'm just done with them in my brain. But I have so many interesting thoughts on this, and this was incredible to write on this topic of sort of the internet and literature in this way. And I loved it, and I want to continue learning about these things. I've definitely thought about doing a PhD. My advisor encouraged me to. Actually, the university I was at offered me a spot, but I just feel a little bit too burnt out to do that. If you guys have any questions related to doing a master's degree, deciding whether or not it's worth it, or where to study, things like that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know that it's very helpful. I really just have my anecdotal personal experience, but I'm happy to be helpful in any way I can if you guys want to ask me questions on that. That's totally fine. I wouldn't say that the program was too hard or overwhelming, but combined with a few other things that started to get stressful in my life in the springtime, BookTube just couldn't be handled. I couldn't do it. And also my reading for non-essential class reading just absolutely plummeted, honestly. I have 4 books that I read in the 6 months that I was gone, and I'm pleased with myself for even doing that. But all of that is a bit personal to get into, but I guess I wanted to say that, like, one of the reasons why my posting has been really irregular over time has mostly been because of, like, mood fluctuation related to depression, and I didn't really recognize that I was even dealing with that until it sort of came to a crucial point in the springtime, which meant that I am in such a better place now because I finally was able to kind of address it and deal with it. And for that reason, like, I don't know, knock on wood, never say never, but I feel like I'm in a lot better place to actually take on this channel again and to post more consistently. And right now this is like a really, really helpful thing for my mental health, so I'm really sort of diving in and holding on to that in that way. That sort of creative outlet is phenomenally good for me. And for that reason, I'm like really grateful for all of you that are just like happy that I'm back rather than caring that I just disappeared for so long. So that's really nice of all of you. Okay, the lighting has gotten quite bad, so I think I'm going to just wrap up this video by sharing with you all the books that I read. Actually, that's not true. So for the few months that I was away and not updating anything on BookTube, I had a really hard time reading anything that was not assigned for school. And so I read a few other like smaller things, but I'm just gonna update you on the ones that I think are sort of worth talking about, and the books that I read because I wanted to and that I did enjoy and that I haven't updated anywhere else. So the first one is Burial Rite by Hannah Kent, and actually, having just said not updated anywhere else, I actually talk about this book in a recent video called Which Talk Made Me Do It, and if this sounds interesting to you, you need to go watch that video because I don't think I'm going to say much about it here, but I do talk quite a bit about it there in terms of sort of like having a witchy vibe and having a sort of like a characterization of like reclaiming female history fictionally. It's based on the true story of a woman in Iceland who is accused of murdering her employers as a servant when she was a servant, and then she is assigned to house arrest after she's been convicted of this crime, and she's living with a local government leader and their family, and then she's being prepared for burial by a pastor or like a clergyman of some kind. I can't remember which religion it was, but the book is I thought the writing style was really strong. I think it did well there. But the book is very kind of dark and very cold, and kind of depressing. I don't have a lot of thoughts on this book. I expected that I would like it more than I did. I think it's decent. I don't really have anything to complain about, but it hasn't really stood out to me, and it hasn't been like very impactful for me personally, but it's a decent book, and if the premise speaks to you, it's worth looking into, I think. I also read The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, and this is part of a very long series of books. I think there's like 9 of them, and I know this has been popular at least on subsections of Book Talk or BookTube that I inhabit at times, maybe a little bit more in the past than at this very moment. It's not quite as hot, but this is a fantasy series, and I don't normally read fantasy, but at the moment that I picked this up, I was really craving some escapism, and it definitely gave me that. I remember thinking that the book's strongest quality is that it was really very, immersive. As I remember thinking that the book's strongest quality was that the writing was just really very solid the whole way through. I'm not explaining this very well. I remember thinking that the book's greatest quality was the writing style. It's not showy, and it's not like dramatically beautiful in any way, in my opinion, but it is consistently compelling. The reading experience felt like being pulled along by a current. It felt very effortless, but the book was never really exciting, really a lot happening. I expected it to be a little bit more intense or more action for the book. That like I had anticipated there being a lot more like action or intense moments in the book, and actually when I finished it, looking back on like what happened in the book, it felt like there wasn't a lot that happened, but that it was a breeze to get through. It just went by really quickly because the writing was very beautiful, and for that reason it felt like a really cozy read. It felt very immersive and distracting, which was really good for me at the time. But I haven't been compelled enough to pick up the rest of them. I still do want to, but I don't think I'm in much of a hurry because fantasy I need to be in a very particular mood for. But I could see myself as we go into the winter picking up more in that series soon. At least like, because I know the longer series is made up of smaller series, so maybe finishing this like mini series and with a series of the Assassin's Apprentice section of it. I also read The Strangeness of Beauty by Lydia Minatoya, and this is a historical fiction novel following a Japanese immigrant to Seattle, her and her husband, in 1930s. And this woman and her husband have immigrated to Seattle, and then her younger sister and her husband also immigrate to Seattle, and very early in the book, just right at the beginning, we learn that her husband has now died, and then her sister has died in childbirth. So she becomes the mother figure to her niece and lives with her brother-in-law until eventually concerned that the niece, the younger daughter, baby, is not going to grow up with enough of her Japanese heritage. They are both sent back to Japan, but they go back to live with the main woman's mother and like the niece's grandmother. Is this getting too confusing? I'm sorry. I should have looked up their names before. Anyway, but she has been estranged from her mother. So they have a very strange relationship. And then all of this is happening inside the context of like the home front of Japan during World War II. Which is, sort of like before the war and then through the war, which is very interesting because this was like a really important cultural moment in terms of like industrializing and the modernization of Japan. There was a lot of like political changes, or like during at least like the 50 years before that and leading up to that moment. And then also our main character has lived in the United States for several years, so she has much more of a Western perspective than a lot of the other people in her town. So seeing sort of again the home front of Japan from her perspective is also very interesting. I quite liked this book. It's also very beautifully written. I feel like it's kind of a underestimated book. If it sounds interesting to you, I think it's definitely worth picking up. It's also very concerned with like autobiography and like the way that we have a desire to capture ourselves in our writing and like wanting to tell your own story. I did really like that. I then also read The Bombay Prince by Sujata Massey, and I have talked about this series before. It's the third one in the Pervin Mystery series, which follows a woman who is the youngest lawyer in Bombay in 1930s India, I believe, and she has a law degree from Oxford, but technically she's not legally allowed to practice in Bombay, so she is just a solicitor for her dad's law firm. But what the author does really well in this series, and I've spoken about this before, is that she uses this character to very cleverly explore sort of the intersection of this modernizing city, but at a point that is like there are still a lot of sexist laws for women, a lot of social expectations or limitations of women that mean that they don't have proper access to their legal rights or to knowledge of their legal rights. And this author sort of uses that intersection of this female lawyer serving that demographic of women. I really like this series. I really, really like this series. I think that being said, my favorite is still the second. And this one I might like better than the first, not because of the mystery, but because of where we're at in the character development of the main characters, who I'm just really attached to all the characters. But that being said, I think that There were a few things about this that I didn't like as much, but mostly just in juxtaposition to the second one, which I think was done so well. Anyway, I would absolutely recommend this series. I really, really like it. And Perveen is just like a really fun character. Not fun, maybe fun isn't the right word. She doesn't seem fun. She seems very like business and focused, but like she's really cool. She's a really cool character. And then actually the last one I have to talk about, like I said, I did not do much reading in this break, is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I read this book because it was recommended by Claire at Claire Reads Books, and I don't normally read romance of any kind. This is like, I would say this is romantic fiction, but I do really like romance when it's done well and when it's good. This is, you know, contemporary romance. And anyway, this book is a friends to lovers trope about Alex and Poppy, who met in college and became really good friends, and then became like, they would take summer trips with each other every time, because Poppy just absolutely loves traveling and like now works for a magazine writing about travel and things. So they did that until something happened that put a real strain on their friendship, and they haven't really talked in like a year. And Poppy decides that she really wants to repair this relationship, and that's sort of where this book begins. And you don't really know what had caused the strain on their relationship before, and that unfolds. But she wants to repair this relationship by them going on a trip again. So that's sort of where things go. And then, like I said, it's a friends to lovers trope. And I don't remember the details of this book extremely well, because I kind of think I like binged it and thus didn't retain all of it. But I do remember really liking Alex. Poppy felt a little bit annoying to me, but I did really like Alex. And I think for the most part, this was a well done book. Since then, I wouldn't say this is one of my favorite romantic contemporary romances, but I think it's well done. Anyway, I don't have anything more to say on it, I don't think. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I read. There wasn't a lot of reading over the summer. Wasn't in the mood, but that's okay, you know. Anyway, I think that's where we'll end this video. I thank you for joining me for this little ramble, this little chat. And I'm glad to have kind of caught up on a few of those books. I felt bad for those ones that I just happened to read while I wasn't updating on YouTube, and it didn't make any sense to go back and update on them. But I felt bad having them left out. So now it's all good. And this is fun to kind of have a chill chat kind of video, because I don't know, it feels a little bit more personable, but it's also kind of hard to have your thoughts, I don't know, I get like tense up because you're filming, and then if you mess up you have to go edit it out, and that tenses me up sometimes. But to be able to just like flow and talk is nice, and I'm really jealous of the booktubers who can do that, especially keeping all of their thoughts about all the different books so organized and like succinct, and yet not forget to say something. I actually think it's quite impressive. But anyway, yeah, I think we should end that here before I keep on rambling on anymore. So thank you for joining me for this video, and I'll see you guys in another one. Bye.